All right, welcome to the Community Relations meeting of the Greenfield City Council. We are now at order and have our new committee member. So welcome Councilor Minhas to the committee.
Howdy, thank you.
And Councilor Brown. So my first order is to say this meeting is being recorded by the Community Relations Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Okay. Awesome. And then I need a verbal that Councilor Minhas is here. So
Yes.
great. We're gonna just take a roll call of members. So I have Councilor Minhas, Councilor Perry,
Present.
Councilor Brown,
Present.
and I am here. And Councilor Gilmore is not. All right. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes for November 18th, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I make a motion for approval of the November 18th minutes.
And I heard a second.
Well, I was gonna say a small grammatical edit, someone's pronouns were different. Oh, but I don't know if that's
I
who,
didn't bring mine with mine. I just have to send
There's a copy.
I don't know if it's worth fixing, but anyway. So
Okay,
I didn't catch that, but
Sage Chorito is non-binary.
which one?
Sage Chorito is non-binary.
Okay. Okay. So I hear an amendment to the minutes to fix Sage's pronouns.
I second that.
Okay, and so the amendment has been seconded and we'll just do a roll call for approval of the minutes
As amended.
as amended. So Councilor Brown,
Yes.
Councilor Minhas,
I think he said yes, but we didn't hear him.
okay,
Okay.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
and yes from me. So that is approved. Great. Next order of business is our public comment period. We don't have anybody in person, so we have at least Stephanie on. Stephanie, do you have you put in for public comment?
She might be
Yeah,
away.
it seems like it.
Yeah, she might be away from the computer.
Hi.
Oh.
I did put my name in the chat, Stephanie Duclos,
Okay.
Chapman Street.
Sorry, I
Precinct
missed that.
It's
Okay,
okay. I was literally trying to type it as fast as you guys were saying, hey, anybody want to speak?
good
So I
enough.
did-
3 minutes.
okay, so I see that housing is on the agenda tonight. And I wanted to add that, there was some concern with pulling of federal funding regarding subsidized properties. So when we're thinking about developments we're trying to bring in, we're subject to a lot of the federal funding. So I'm concerned that we're going to have some of that pulled. That also concerns me in the school system as well. As far as quality of life stuff, I am experiencing a lot of new activity in my area because a homeless shelter was put in my backyard and the warming shelter, about 50 feet, maybe 100 at the most. Beyond that, there have been increased crime, vandalism. Every car in the neighborhood, not every car, but several cars in our neighborhood have been broken into. And we have public responders on a regular basis in my neighborhood. So I imagine that there'll be some discussion regarding the homeless today and what the housing plans are. I do have to say, given my own personal experience, I would definitely notify on the site approval plan process, which is coming up. I would also want abutters to be notified. There is a law on Mass General Law that we can't preempt about notification. So I don't want to see us being the Greenfield, falling into legal issues with trying to change something that abutters are legally able to be notified about. That's about it. I do have more, but I only have 3 minutes. So, and I don't have anything written down because I'm at work. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, it is 6:08 and I am closing public comment. So we've invited Amy and Susan to join us tonight. So why don't you come up to the big kids table? So our intention is to regularly, as part of the Public Relations Committee, is bring in experts to further the conversation of what's happening in Greenfield. And so our first topic is housing tonight. And so be great. I'm trying to think who to start with.
Mm-hmm.
She got the paper. Yeah, so Amy, if you want to introduce yourself and your
Sure.
role in the city, and then just would love, I think what I was hoping for, and I emailed you both about, is there's a lot of projects that we keep seeing in the paper and this here and this, that, and to just like between the two of you, give us a sense of what's going on. So
Sure. So I'm Amy Kaling. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Greenfield. And I figured I'd address sort of 2 buckets. One is ongoing development. I'm not going to get into the weeds of every development project because that's not the point of tonight's meeting, but I can just give you a sense of what is already underway. And then I thought I'd spend a minute talking about other ways that my department interacts with housing in the city, because I think there are some things we do that people either don't know about or they don't get talked about a lot. And it might just be helpful to say a sentence or 2 about that. And then I will field whatever questions and Susan will fill in the gaps and correct me where I go. So I'm gonna pass out 2 handouts we quickly made. Councilor Minhas, I apologize, I don't have this for you, but these are essentially in the housing study. There's this development pipeline that may look familiar to all of you. And I just took that and updated a little bit. There's not much of an update to it. But what I'm passing around now, I will email so that you can distribute it to everybody.
perfect.
Can you please post that online as well? Thank you.
Sure thing. I say, looking at Laura to make sure that she knows how to do that.
I will figure out how to do that. Great, thank you.
And these are it's an internal document that my department pulled together. So as will come as no surprise to you, and Stephanie actually brought up the issue of funding between federal funding and just the nature of funding in general and doing construction and housing development these days. This is, as things look today, that could look different tomorrow. But you'll see there's a list of all of the projects that I'm aware of that are currently underway. The ones that we added to this list primarily are 80 School Street, which used to be Bart's and Snow's ice cream. I've added it there with a giant asterisk. When the property was sold, there were plans included at the time of that sale that showed that property could contain housing. I don't know if the developers are going to do housing there. They may decide to make it retail. They may do something totally different, but I added it on the list as a parcel that it would feel logical, given that there are plans floating around out there that it could be housing. We also added Stone Farm Lane. I don't believe was on the original pipeline list. So we've added that. That is 24 units being done by Noble Home. And then I added 2 properties currently owned by the city, 31 Sheepside Street and 29 Washington Street. Again, these have an asterisk next to them. They are parcels that our department is talking about asking the city to surplus because they both are developable as single-family homes. Whether that goes through city council and eventually turns into housing or not is TBD, but I wanted to include them on the list in the interests of thoroughness. So if you add up all of these units, understanding that some of these things are up in the air, some of them we don't know the units for, and the unit numbers may shift a little, it's roughly 200 units. The city's housing study said over the next 10 years, we should aim for 675 to 1,000 units. So this is a good first step. But, you know, it's definitely obviously not getting us there, but we're only in 2025. I think, Laura, when you emailed me, you also asked about a timeline.
Yeah.
I don't know. Each of these projects is moving along at a different timeline. So for some of them, there may be construction happening sooner. The 60 Wells Street property, there is some construction underway now. The Wilson's redevelopment for the Putnam, I believe some infrastructure work may get started this spring. A lot of these projects are still in the permitting and the funding phase. 184 Petty Plain Road, which is a Habitat single-family home, that one should be finished. That's probably the first of these.
Where is that?
Projects?
It's, you know where the fairgrounds parking is?
Yeah.
If you go to the, I guess it would be the west end, and you look across, there's the road, there is a small house that's being built there.
Oh, okay.
Was this originally part of the Wisdom Way solar?
No,
Oh.
no, actually, the land was, yes, and they sold the land to them to be able to put up this house, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I actually have a couple of additions that I
Please
forgot to
Go
mention.
for it.
All right. First of all, I'm Susan Wargaptic, and I work with Housing Greenfield. And Housing Greenfield is an advocacy organization for the community and works with individuals, organizations. We're lucky to have folks from the city who attend. And so it's a wide variety of folks to talk about housing issues, learn about what's going on, and if necessary, then proceed to write appropriate letters, that kind of stuff in relation to housing. In addition, I'm also a commissioner for the Greenfield Housing Authority. And it's the housing authority that I completely didn't think about until we were talking to give you an idea of what's happening there. We are looking to do some major work on the Winslow, which is at the corner of Main and Wells. We are looking to develop that as supportive housing, which it is not right now, even though the populations that are in the shelter and are in the Winslow are largely the same. So we are in that process of developing, there's a relationship going on there. All things being equal, we hope also to add two fully accessible units in that building. So our units are accessible, but not they're in the, 2008 accessibility range as opposed to the 2025 accessibility assumptions. So these would be two fully accessible units. Also, we are working on developing 5 units on the island between Elm Street and Conway Street.
Oh,
Okay, so right near where the health center is.
yeah, there's those 2 houses.
There's 2 houses, and then there's a wooded area in
Yep.
between. We were hoping to make those 5 accessible units. Unfortunately, the geography does not allow that. There's a lot of ledge there, and we can't figure out how to do it. And if we try to get affordable units into that area and we have less than 5, we are going to have a real hard time getting them funded. So we will be doing 4 units that are that are affordable, and we'll be doing one affordable, fully accessible unit there. So that's in progress. We have some funding.
Nicer is they've done the outside of those houses.
Yeah, we have I gotta say, the maintenance team at the Housing Authority is pretty amazing. They work all the time, they work really hard, and they've done a really good job in trying to maintain all of the buildings that we have. So it's been really impressive. But those are also kind of online to happen over, probably the housing on Conway Street will happen earlier than everything with the Winslow, but it's in the range of all of these other projects here.
I guess I'll just
That's what I
open
had
it.
on the, general housing piece.
Yeah.
I can offer some other things that my department is doing
That'd be great.
in housing, if you'd like to hear those first. A couple things that we're doing, my department administers community development block grant funding, CDBG. And in this current CDBG round of funding that we're administering right now, we are partnering with Community Action to do a housing rehab program. We opted to partner with them because they have existing programs that can access other grant funding for things like efficiency upgrades, roofs, things of that sort. So this is, we hope, a way that will stretch community development block grant funding a little bit more. So that program has gotten underway recently. They're in the process of selecting their first house to repair. We also administer the Get the Let Out program with Greenfield Savings Bank, which helps de-letting for income qualifying folks. And we are starting a small pilot program in our office for people who are right at the edge and don't income qualify, that will help them prepare bid-ready specs so that even though we can't pay for the actual de-letting work, we can arm the homeowner with information so they know they're getting a good price and a good quote, and they're asking for the right things to be de-letted.
That's huge, because we had a contractor in my house who said that they were certified and then they weren't, and
Yeah.
essentially we're looking for a bribe to bring in someone else who could sign off on the project.
So we've had a couple of applications come through recently where the Get the Let Out program is very strict on who qualifies and who doesn't, understandably, and folks who they just missed the qualifier. And this is a way that we felt like we could offer some support to them. So we are doing that. And we also work with the health department and the building department and the Attorney General's office on the receivership program. It's a program where properties that have fallen into disrepair in Greenfield and eventually get condemned by the Board of Health can, through a court process, have a receiver appointed who will come in and fix up the property and then sell that property. It's a very long, slow-moving process, but there are some times where folks pass away and their family owns a house and they just don't have the ability or desire to care for it. And this is a way that properties like that, or if someone is elderly and they're in a nursing home and the property is just languishing, it can help properties like that.
And I have one other thing that I would mention in terms of Housing Greenfield, and that is that we have an intern who is working with us to go looking at rental properties in town to establish whether the addresses of those properties, because believe it or not, we do not have a list in the city of all of the addresses of the rental properties in town. And to also look at how many mailboxes they have, how many electric meters they have, to ensure that we have rental units that are up to code. So we are doing that right now, and we'll be doing it through May when our little grant is done. But we have a student who is working with us, and we are looking forward to getting some information. That information will go to the city in terms of the assessor's office, the housing, the health department and the building inspector and possibly others.
Do you think she'll be able to capture everything before May?
Yes, by the end of May, we're looking, I mean, we're not going to do the whole city,
Right.
but we expect that our student will be doing about 80 hours worth of work. And we expect, so far it's been winter, so it's been hard, but we've been doing about 10 minutes a house. So we figured that we can get a significant number of houses, and we're trying to pick areas where we know there are a lot of rental units as opposed to, we have a listing of where they are, and we're doing it street by street and trying to get at least a basis to be able to do this. And I think if we do it well, we can probably get another grant from CHAPA to complete the job next year. So.
Anything else you guys want to add?
I'd love to answer questions.
answer
if you have
questions.
any.
Yeah, when we open his questions, I just want to make sure that Counselor Minhas has a chance to chime in if you want to. Since it's always hard when you're online.
Yeah, this was some very useful information. A lot of this stuff I didn't know about. So thank you. I'm just trying to soak it all in.
Great. So, yeah, it looks like we've got a pretty good mix throughout the city. My question is just on the kind of affordability mix, and I know there are different words for like whether it's affordable housing or officially affordable or just affordable for normal people versus subsidized. So I just want to get a sense from all the projects.
Let me explain.
That would be
a little
great.
bit, because that's the federal government on an annual basis. Now, we don't know what the federal government's doing anymore, but HUD has in past
Right.
years, HUD has done an analysis of what a family of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 8 would need in income in order to be able to have 30% of their income go toward housing. And that 30% would go toward not just rent, but also utility bills, that kind of stuff. Okay. The idea is that 30% of your income is what you should be paying to be living in a home and have it be affordable to you. So you should be able to take the rest of your income and use it for food and clothing and whatever else you need to use it for. And if you are having to spend more than 30%, the federal government considers you cost burdened. Okay. We have a lot of folks in town who are at 50% or more in terms of what they're paying of their incomes in order to live in housing. So part of what we're looking to do, and when we talk about affordable housing, what we're talking about is housing that would either through Section 8 certificates or Massachusetts rental voucher program certificates, or through with having the housing built with state funds, which requires that we be at that 30% limit. So for instance, that's one of the things that Wilson's is involved in, right? And that's part of the reason it's taken a little while for them to get going, is they had to get all those pieces together. That they would be charging 30% of people's income, and they have a mix that in terms of those developments, they have a certain number of years that they have to do that depending on what the funding is. So it could be 15 years, it could be 30 years, it could be in perpetuity. It depends on what the mix of funding is. And housing is far more complicated than I ever thought it was going to be, and I still don't understand it. But it's that general thing.
And
So
that means that like the Wilson's property, you might not have to have a voucher because through the state funding, they've made the rents lower.
Correct, correct. And they will have a mix that says, okay, this amount of people have to be at 60% of the area median income. This number of apartments are available for people at 30%, so that they can make their financial mix work.
Okay.
But they will say, we are looking for X number of households in this range and X number of households in that range. So, so that's the way a lot of that works. And the Wells Street shelter is going to be at 30% of area median income or below. So, all of those apartments are going to be for very low income folks. Yeah,
And that's going to include people on disability and all that stuff.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
Do you know if the Wilson's project will continue even if the co-op drops out?
I would expect it would. I don't know that for a fact. I don't think the co-op's going to drop out. I think it's a question of how long they
Yeah.
can
Take care of
wait to
this.
get this, can wait to do this and, whether their investors will allow that. And they may have to do some more work on investors. I think they really want to move, so.
Or maybe they have some loud construction that might make
Maybe.
somebody want to,
Yeah,
negotiate.
yeah.
Yep.
We're hoping.
I was just going to ask Amy, if any of these projects drop out, could you just try to remember to tell Tammy so she can let us know? There's been a few times in the past where I've said something, and people look at me like, oh, dude, that was canceled 6 months ago. I sound like a fool, because I don't know about it.
If I know.
If you
sometimes
remember
I don't
and you,
know either, and I'll
if you,
wonder.
but if you hear something or notify something, just let us know. So
Yeah,
we're not.
going through this and going back and looking at the housing study made me wish there is some fancy software out there that allows you to have on a website a sort of a map that you can keep updated. You
Yeah.
I don't know who the you is, probably me. And I wish that we had something like that, but I'd love to find a way to keep this sort of, I
Correct.
update it
Yeah.
once a month or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be glad to let you know.
Yeah. Just so we're not spreading false information and saying, oh, yeah. The people are getting like, well, I heard that. Oh, sorry.
The other thing I would say to Councillor Wondolowski, and I think this goes to Stephanie's point, being concerned about federal funding, is that not all of these, no. A portion of these projects are a mix of affordable housing, but it is all finance dependent. And so if certain funding streams change requirements or go away and are replaced with different ones, that could change the mix of what the units look like. So as of now, this list, to the best of my knowledge, and again, it's a thing that shifts, there is some market rate on here. There is far more affordable housing, but affordable at a wide range. So I would think of it as attainable, not affordable. And that honestly reflects the economic reality of building housing of the size that Greenfield can sustain in this current climate with this current funding picture.
The other thing you should be aware of is the Affordable Homes Act, which is the state's new bond bill, which supposedly is going to put billions of dollars, make billions of dollars available for the building of affordable housing. How that's going to play out, considering the economic situation that the state is in right now, could mean that while they've got the leeway in terms of bonding to be able to go up to over 6 billion, is that it? Yeah, I think it's 6 billion. That it is possible that they don't fully bond. So that would also impact all of these developments that we're talking about that have affordable housing requirements on them. So it's always a moving target.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I would like to just talk about in definitions is naturally occurring affordable housing, which is just that I've got an apartment, I'm going to keep my rents low. Basically, I've had the same tenants for the last 20 years, I'm going to keep my rents low, that kind of thing. So that's naturally available affordable housing, but it's not the same thing as what we talk about when we talk about the specifically affordable housing requirements. And then we talk about market rate, and market rate is, this is what I want to charge. Do you want to pay it?
And I know for any community be vibrant, you need a mixture,
Correct.
because
Yeah, and I think this list, it certainly skews towards the affordable, but it is a mixture of affordable and market rate and a mixture of some home ownership opportunities and some rental opportunities.
And let me just say, for us, we are $30,000 under the state median income in Greenfield. Okay, it doesn't matter the size of the family, we're $30,000 under it. So what that means is that many of the people who are working full-time, are working for the city, are, teachers, firefighters, they are often, their income is often under the affordable housing limit. So it is possible that you could find that what we're talking about are people who you think, oh, they should be able to afford things. No, they've got a large family, they've got a disabled spouse, they've got, they can't rise above that level. And so they would be eligible for this for when we talk about affordability. We're not just talking about the poorest of the poor here. We're really talking about a wide range of people. An individual, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just to give you an idea, an individual living alone, the area median income is somewhere in the $60,000 range.
70.
Yeah, so if they have an income that is under that, they're eligible for some level of subsidy depending on what their income is. So because they're looking at $30,000, they're looking at 30% of their income. So let's say they make $60,000, they're looking at 20%, $20,000 of their money going into housing. So just to kind of give you an idea, and I'm happy to provide those numbers for you if you'd like them.
They're in our housing study available on our department's website.
no, I think it's important to recognize that I think we have a picture of what affordable person is, and the reality is very different.
Yeah.
And I think it's also helpful to allay the fears that what affordable housing looks like. Because I think we have a picture of, slum, high-rise ickiness. And I don't think that's what any of these builders are looking to build.
No.
I'd agree.
And that, by the way, includes the shelter. The shelter, the plans for the shelter are actually very nice, including an outdoor patio and trees, and the plants are really very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's studies that if they're build places where people want to be, then people will upkeep them and take good care of all of that.
Mhm.
Treat people with dignity.
I'm curious how we can help, like, this wasn't the housing study that was presented, but how can we help more people have access to this information, or what can we do so more people get this? Like, everybody watched the recording, but I don't know, how can we share this knowledge? And I think some of the destigmatizing part would be helpful too.
Yeah, isn't that the perpetual question?
Mm.
I think engaging, our housing study, I know housing study sounds like possibly a very boring thing, but we have an interactive version on our website that I do think actually is very user friendly and easy to read and does have most of these projects on it. I'm happy to, I'm going to update it with a couple of notes from tonight, but send this around so this updated version can go out. It also is just changing all the time. So I think I'm just thrilled. I think having us come and talk at meetings like this is a great way of just keeping the conversation going and giving folks an opportunity to engage with us.
Yeah, and to keep the silos different, as you said when we started out, there's so much conversation going on with so many different things, people get confused.
I do.
You know.
And also things change, even if
Yes.
you aren't confused on Monday.
Right.
7 things could happen before Wednesday and your whole understanding could change.
Yeah.
So-
And housing financing is very complicated and very difficult. And I mean, I have a vague idea. I've been doing this now for 6 years and I have a vague idea of what I'm doing. And and I think because of that and because the word, like a word like affordable is thrown around a lot, it makes people don't understand what we're talking about. And I've noticed that whenever we start having real concrete conversations where we are able to say, this is what it means, people go, oh, okay, this is not what I thought it was.
Right.
And when we can show them, drawings and show them photographs of housing, that also makes it better. I mean, we have the potential to have a real exciting change happening in Greenfield over the next, 5, 6, 7 years. And I think the kind of construction you've seen at the library is the kind of thing that we're really looking at for a lot of these houses. And I think that's exciting, but we're also looking like at Petty Plain Road or at 187 Hope Street. We're looking at much more traditional housing that you would see anywhere in Greenfield.
Sure.
So it's a real mix.
Thanks.
Yeah, just there's one little comment I could make. I mean, recently I've just been hearing a bunch of folks just come up to me and to find places to live, and then just being astonished with the prices. Like some of these, like it's like a single bedroom is like 1,500 bucks, and I'm like, how can people afford that? And I think another thing that a lot of constituents are concerned about is also where, if we want an uptick in our population and a vibrant uh, community, we also have to start thinking about where we want these people to work, because it's,
Mhm.
I mean, those things, you can't just live in a place.
Right.
You also have to be able to provide for yourself, and I think we should probably start doing a better job of trying to find how we can collaborate those two. I know there's been some projects that have been proposed about, like some retail or commercial activity on the first floor or something like that, and then housing above it, or some type of a situation where the employees live upstairs. And there's been different models that have been happening in other cities. But um, thank you guys for saying all this information. I learned a lot today.
I just want to say that emphasis on working with employers is a great one. And what I hear most often now actually are employers who are existing in Greenfield, and their employees can't find a place to live. The jobs are there, but their employees are commuting from far away because there's either nothing here, or the little bit that there is here is too expensive. So I think that partnership exists, but you're right that they go hand in hand. We can't just do one without the other.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that, in terms of the apartment prices that you were talking about, part of that is because we have so few vacant either homes for sale or apartments in the community. And so landlords can charge what they want, and if people are desperate enough, they will get it. Part of the reason we've been concentrating a lot on affordability is because exactly that. If we can get more housing that people can automatically afford, the prices for rentals elsewhere will start to go down because there's more competition. But right now we're at a 0.1% vacancy rate. A healthy vacancy rate is 5 to 7%. Just to give you an idea of how difficult things are right now.
I did just now that we're talking about it, I just did have a question. There's another thing that I've come across is that where at the same time there's a lot of people that are unhoused, there's also this phenomena where people have like too much housing, and that if there's like a giant house and it's like, the kids have moved away and you have like an older person living there, and it's like 5 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. They don't need that, but is there any in any of the developments that were just discussed, is there any that's like specifically for like older folks that could potentially, live in a community with people of their similar age and would be accessible and potentially free up some of those single or multifamily homes?
One of the things that I think is true with a lot of these apartments is that they're open to anybody. And I know myself, I'm 79 years old, okay? I look, if I could find a place that would allow me to have my dog and I could move, I would probably move now. But I can't find that place. So if these apartments are available and if they are, affordable, then seniors, regardless of what their income is, would be able to find those places. I know of a number of people who have talked to me about this and said, yeah, I'm ready. I don't want to take care of a big house anymore, but there is no place for them to go.
And Councillor Minhas, what I've also heard, none of these are strictly senior housing, and I haven't heard anybody come looking, at least talking to me, about strictly senior housing. But what I do hear all the time is accessibility, and that if there were accessible units, it doesn't matter if it's not a just senior community. And so there are accessible units in many of these, and we are trying to encourage developers when they come to us and talk about housing to do what they can to make those units, especially those first floor units, fully accessible, regardless of who they expect that their anticipated tenant might be, just so that older folks who do want to downsize have a place to go and age in place.
Right.
I have two questions. One, are there any resolutions, ordinances from the city council that could help with housing? And then my follow-up question is, I know we're talking right now about first floor dwelling, especially in the Main Street area, and the EDC committee is working with planning to revise that, because I think we're trying to be mindful of both disability and accessibility, but also not losing Main Street businesses and how to balance that. So that my follow-up is, just your thoughts on how to do that artfully, with the intention of
Sure.
balancing those.
I think, I believe it was proposed by Councillor Garrett, but I may be wrong. The amendment to zoning, which allowed for first floor housing
Yeah.
in commercial core, but not on the active street face, I think is a great way to go about it, because it preserves that ability to have first floor accessible living, and it offers an opening for more residential space in the commercial core, and also preserves a retail space. That to me felt like a really good way to balance those two.
I think the other thing is that, especially since the pandemic, but even before, the question of retail as we've known it is kind of in flux.
Yeah.
And so if we can provide the kind of retail there that we need on first floors, that will be something that involves walkability, and then housing in those areas becomes much more valuable, because it means that those folks who are living downtown are the ones who are really creating and the support of the businesses downtown. The other thing I should mention, and it's something I've been talking with the GBA about, is we've got too much parking in town. And we have, when the parking study was done, at no time, even at the busiest time, was more than 55% of the parking spaces in town filled. There are private parking areas that might be great places to put housing, and that could be also first floor commercial and upper floor residential, and might be a really good possibility. So we're not that, you know, while we have some options here that we really need to explore more. And I, along with Erica Geese, who is an architect, are going to be at some point this spring, I hope, talking with folks at the GBA about what are the options here, because from my perspective, the businesses are leaving money on the table. There are, you know, whether they want to be the owner of that property or they want to have a developer come in and they will sell the land to a developer. In either case, there are some opportunities here that we need to look at. And that would also make the city cooler. We wouldn't have, you know, it, you know, it would be environmentally much better for us as well. So there are opportunities that we need to look at.
Any other tools that you need from the city council to make housing easier?
In the future, once we find out how many short-term rentals we have in town, we're going to need to look at a short-term rental ordinance. Right now, I was discussing with the mayor the possibility of trying to get a full listing of what we have, because we don't have one. And
What would a short-term ordinance be?
it's Airbnbs and Verbos and those kinds of places. So we're talking about places where it would be less than 30 days. And, you know, if there's a turnover. And right now, we don't have a huge number in town.
No, when I look at the apps, I haven't, like, almost nothing pops up for Greenfield, so.
Yeah, there's 34 on this AirDNA. It's like a site aggregator to get the data.
So we, you know, once we understand what that is, but for instance, in places like Buckland and Shelburne, they've already put in those kinds of ordinances because they're starting to see how housing that would be year-round housing becoming multiple short-term housing. And that kind of pressure on the housing market would really be a problem for us. So that, and also in terms of the ADU situation, one of the options is to make sure that ADUs are not used as short-term rentals. And so that's something that you know, will be coming up as well. Okay. And that can be done now as opposed to when we have to get the list and figure out what all this means.
On my side, I would say, I think we've had a lot of zoning go through relative to housing lately, a lot. And it's great. And I love the conversation. At a certain point, I hope we can take a pause, because for developers who are looking to build, I think it's very challenging to attract developers if they get the sense that your zoning changes every other day. And so I understand why all of these are coming up now. But rather than more change, I think I would advocate for a pause, at least as it relates specifically to things like zoning and housing. Other things, great. Other thing that I would mention is we have been talking to Councilor Brown and Councilor Gordon about an affordable housing trust. And we are working in our office and with some local community members to see if that would be a tool that would make sense for Greenfield.
How would that work? What would that entail in an elevator speech?
So it would be it would be a way of capturing funds. What funds is a big question. Some communities use Community Preservation Act funds. Other communities have used ARPA. Other communities have used private donations or gifts of land. I don't have that piece of the puzzle solved for, but it would be a way of capturing those funds and putting them into a segregated fund governed by a group of folks appointed, however you define them in the ordinance that city council would pass, but typically appointed by the mayor, who have expertise in finance and real estate and affordable housing. And it would allow them to do a wide range of things. So some communities that have affordable housing trusts that are very well funded use them to purchase real estate. They can move much more quickly than a municipality on its own can. And so they could acquire land and preserve it. other communities that have smaller funds use them for things like down payment assistance for low-income folks, or rental assistance, or housing rehab. It's another tool that affords municipalities in certain situations
To help.
more flexibility to help with housing. The concern for me, I think it's a great idea and want to see it move forward. I just want to make sure before we move forward that we're not just taking funding that's already being used for housing and making it more complicated for folks to access. So if this is filling a gap, or can be a tool that would be useful, I think it would be a great thing. So sneak peek, maybe.
Yeah.
We're talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get into it, but there are potential funding streams, like even a community, this would be a smaller funding stream, but a community impact fee on short-term rentals for a local excise tax for 3%, which would probably not generate more than like 25,000, but still, just as an example.
Rental
Yeah.
assistance, that kind of stuff, that works.
Yeah.
So it's just very preliminary conversation that has gone not much further than my desk at the moment, but I thought a worthwhile conversation for our community to have.
Something that I wanted to bring up in public, and I know Susan, you I think you know this, how they work, but it's come up about land trusts, and specifically community land trusts and what they are. Can you say out loud your understanding, just so that we.
Who knows that better is.
I know,
is Sarah. But yeah, I mean, it is a piece of land that is owned by a nonprofit entity that then rents out its land to others to build upon. Okay, or they can do it themselves. That's also a possibility. What it does do is it keeps, first of all, it makes it so that the cost that if they do it for housing, they can do it for housing that's rental, they can do it for housing that's ownership. If they do it for housing that's ownership, the people who buy the house own the house, but not the land. Okay, so it keeps the house more affordable, first of all. And secondly, it limits what they can sell the house for in the future to keep that house affordable as well. So there are a lot of different models. Sarah knows them much better than I do. But the idea is to take the land cost out of the equation, and by doing that, making housing affordable on a different level.
Whoever came up with the name wasn't thinking very well, because it projects the wrong sense of what we're talking about. In the old days, when you hear land trust, that meant buying a piece of property and keeping it as land.
Right.
So people, when they hear this, and I just noticed that in the last year or so, people get so upset about it because they're using the old definition and not understanding the new definition. So.
Often people call them housing trusts now to try to differentiate, but
But
the
it
land.
is a way of, it's holding the land, it's
Right.
preserving the land for affordable housing.
Right.
And
It's a
they've
different
been
tool to
around
do
for
that.
like more than 40 years. so
Sure.
that-
But
Unfortunately.
around here, people think about Bill Cosby, who bought up all the land
Oh, yeah.
to preserve it.
Yeah.
So people around here have that image of that. And so they project that on this conversation.
Yeah.
That's why I think we're so upset
Yeah.
with this particular issue, so.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about how this would affect our tax revenue stream if we are taking $1 million property and the land isn't, and then giving it to the land trust? Because I think that when we have all these conversations about housing, we're not really thinking about how does it affect our bottom line and our service revenue. Thank you.
Nonprofits often pay taxes.
When they have housing, yes.
They have
do.
housing, but when they have housing on them, they pay taxes. The community builders pays taxes. The regional, the housing authority and GHA all pay taxes.
So I'm
that-
sorry, just because that contradicts what the assessor had said. He had said that we had $300 million worth of untaxable nonprofits in our town, and that affects our bottom line by $6 million roughly. So I do have that concern. And
Yep,
so
and
if
I'm
they're
gonna
paying
say-
a tax, they're paying a discounted rate. So I just want to be very financially
Yeah.
aware.
I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
would save that question for the assessor. My office said,
But he may have been
Yeah.
talking about the businesses, CSL outpatient building and that sort of stuff,
Yes.
which is
there's
different.
also GCC, but I
Yeah.
don't want us to,
Right.
to take a wild guess
Right,
in a
right,
public
but-
meeting about we think maybe that taxability is.
Right, but
So-
I can say with assurance, because I vote on them, taxes are paid by the Greenfield Housing Authority. And I know because I used to be on the Regional Housing Authority, the taxes are paid by the Regional Housing Authority. So those things I
Yes,
can tell you.
Randy
They-
had said, yes, Randy had said that they pay, but they pay at a discounted rate.
That's correct.
So if
That's
we
correct.
constantly bring in nonprofits or non-taxable entities, you know, all those pennies we don't collect do add up to things we cannot fund.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that-
Totally. I would also just say some of the developers who are developing the affordable housing are not nonprofits.
That's
Also
correct.
important to know they're for-profit developers who just happen to be developing affordable housing because that's where the financing is. Some of them
Right.
are, you're absolutely right, nonprofits.
Yep, and the state actually encourages profit-making developers to do that. What we need to do is we need to encourage them more to be out here. This has not been as welcome an area for them as others.
Right, and the only community land trust project right now at Greenfield is the Stone Farm Lane, so.
Yeah, there's it's the only one doing housing production, but there's another site that they own too in Greenfield.
And by the way, Noble Home is a for-profit developer.
Yes. Yeah.
So is the
the-
land taxable?
Land is paying full property taxes. And some community land trusts in Amherst, they have it so that it is a reduced rate because of the resale restriction, so they're taxing it based on the resale restriction. But that's up to the local assessor. And right now, that hasn't happened and isn't like we haven't considered doing that. And so it's just paying full property taxes.
So I think we are coming to the conclusion of our discussion on housing. So I want to thank both.
That was
Amy
great.
And Susan for spending the time with us and really going through all of the details. It's really important and useful to have. I know this seems like a small audience, but again, this info will live on the website and in the recording and.
But also, we have a little bit more knowledge now, so now when someone stops us before a meeting, we can say, well, that's not really true, or, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Any information we have, the better we are as counselors, because we have the knowledge in our head to say, well, wait a minute, and that sort of stuff. I mean, this whole land trust thing, for me, that refames it for me as I'm getting a lot of people come up to me and saying, hey, and now I can explain, well, that's not really what it is.
Yeah, so understanding that, and some of our counselors are also on the Economic Development Committee, so, can take that knowledge into thinking about zoning and development, so. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting
Thank you.
us. I'll come
Yes.
anytime.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Love the invitation.
We appreciate after hours that you're, as,
And the
And-
Bloom Center is going well too, I guess if you wanted to just. Yeah.
Sure. The warming center, it's getting used far more than I had anticipated. Because it's been so cold and there is so much need. But it has been going well. Our community has stepped up in ways that have really been wonderful to see.
Also, Susan's 24/7.
well, I know, but I don't want to presume.
I'm very pleased to come anytime that you need us, just let us know.
Counselor Wondolowski, if I get you the updated chart and map, or
Send it-
how is that?
Send it to
Send it to Kathy?
Me and CC Kathy and Tammy, then
Okay.
they will make sure that it gets where it needs to go.
Great.
It has to go through Tammy, so it's not a violation of the open meeting law,
This is why I'm asking. Perfect. Great.
technically.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So the last order of business that I wanted to bring up to this committee, and this is just the beginning of the conversation, but how do we want to use this committee? What other conversations do we want to have about it? I see one of the ways we can move forward with the committee as there are things that are kind of in the public discussion, we can have them here.
Yes.
And so we can both be nimble and schedule stuff as it happens, right? But also in foresight, like what are some things that are bubbling up that we should ask to be here?
Thank you very much.
So, counselors, if there are things that you think we should put on future agenda, please name them.
Oh, right now or just?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's something that comes to mind, please throw it out there.
I guess it's more of a question is like other committees can make policy, and does this committee have a scope that it can make policy within, or are we more like, I don't totally understand that.
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah, we can. I have to go back and look at the
What would
actual
you-
description of the
Okay.
committee, but it's mostly to listen and to involve the community in whatever's going on, as far as discussions. This is only the third time we've met since I've been on. It's been a
Right.
year,
It's,
so it's not been the most active.
no, and it was like the committee that we put people on, who were on Ways and Means because they're really busy on Ways and Means, so this was gonna be an easy committee. I don't think that's fair to the public.
Oh, I agree.
So I've also heard one suggestion was that there would be like maybe it's quarterly, but a chance for sort of public comment hearing by different like districts or precincts.
Mhm.
So you would have, maybe the meetings from now until whatever would be a certain number of, because you also have to worry about open meeting and
Sure.
not having quorum of the full
Right.
council. So that you could say like, okay, counselors for districts 1, 2 are this month. And so we don't have to do too many of them
Yeah.
as one of the ideas. That's sort of like.
President Wondolowski, I just wanted to say that's what they did last year or the year before last. I mean, so this is the first community relations meeting that I've been able to attend because they did 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, but they never did 7, 8, and 9. And what they did was they had brought those 3 counselors in from those precincts. And I believe that at-large counselors were, they could or could not attend, but as long as a quorum wasn't there. And it was somewhat an open discussion about things that were happening in the precincts that were there. That's just what I recall from the last time.
Thank you.
Also in November, we had a half a room full here.
We did.
Yeah, in the minutes, when you read the minutes, there was a lot of people, and they all seemed to be pleased to have the opportunity to talk, and then people felt good about just having the opportunity to say what they wanted to say, which felt kind of good. It was kind of a directed conversation, so it wasn't all over the place.
Right.
So if we have a theme, I think it can help, manage the meeting and keep it kind of manageable.
Well, I'm open to suggestions of themes for, as we come into subsequent months. I'm also looking at a ad hoc committee special appointment for some of the unhoused issues to continue that conversation. I've heard about safety concerns at the library. So, being able to have a container for those discussions that isn't necessarily this committee, but part of kind of a charge coming out of.
Sure.
So.
Well, the precinct 7 has a continuing fairgrounds issue. And now the cell phone tower thing, which is playing out in the zoning appeals thing, we'll see how that plays out. That's probably a non-starter until it's decided, but the even at last week's council meeting, we had a couple of people from the fairgrounds precinct 7 addressing their concerns and stuff again. So no matter what happens and no matter what strides are made by the fairgrounds, I think that's going to be ongoing. The precinct 7 neighborhood group is working on a noise ordinance, so that's going to be coming to us.
I'm wondering-
sometime.
Is that like maybe one of the discussions on noise? Because you've
Yeah.
got roosters, you've got
Yeah.
fairgrounds, you've got the marijuana growing in my district.
And if they haven't presented the noise ordinance, what they have so far, I could invite the chair or the person who's kind of overseeing that to come in and talk to us about it. I have to say, they're doing a great job. They're researching it, they're going to other towns, they're looking at other ordinances. They've listened, they've talked to the police chief and the fire chief. They understand what they can do and cannot do, what's legal, what's not legal. So I think they're gonna present with us a pretty interesting ordinance when they get to that point.
Okay.
So that would be kind of interesting to see.
Because I also see this committee as sort of the incubator,
Sure.
like we can have some conversations so that you can test it before it's a full-blown ordinance, because you
Sure.
don't want to like have it
Yeah,
then in writing and before the full council.
right,
When
Yeah.
there might be, some tweaking.
sure. Sure, I have to say, I started off on the wrong foot because my first meeting with them was that stuff. And I really didn't commit because I didn't know what they were talking about. And so right from the start, I was already a shot horse because I lost their trust. And so it's taking me all this year to slowly build back the trust and say, yes, I hear you. Yes, I understand. Yes, I'm with you. But that's an example of how one mistake can really,
Yeah.
hamper you as an effective counselor because you have to earn the trust back and build the trust and that sort of stuff. But
Most definitely.
so anytime we can build trust within this room is a good positive thing.
Okay, so our next meeting is March 17th, 2025, here in this meeting room, Zoom and hybrid unless otherwise posted. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment.
Okay, and a second.
Oh, all right.
Roger. All right, so, Counselor Brown,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
yes for me. Thank you, Stephanie,
Thank you
for
for letting me
attending.
speak. Thank
Oh,
you for
it's
letting
very
me
easy.
speak.
There's only one person, Stephanie.
I appreciate it. I really do. Thanks.
All right, have a good night.
You
Thanks.
too.
You as
Thank
well.
you.
All of you.